Happy New Year, everyone! This video will be on investing in none other than yourself. But before I get into what I mean by that, I have to mention that the TFSA contribution limit for 2022 is $6,000. The number one thing you should do, if anything else in investing, is maxing out your TFSA and having it invested as much as possible. And that's because the gains in your TFSA are 100% tax-free, and so the longer you have for these investments to gain over time, the better off it will be. And if you have not already started investing yet, and I know there's a lot of you out there, there's no better time than in 2022. Now, what do I exactly mean by invest in yourself? Well, on this channel, I usually talk a lot about how to invest your money, and while this is a very important skill to have, it raises the question of where do you get this money in the first place? It would be very hard to save enough money to invest if you're making minimum wage, so a good place to start before investing is to raise your income as much as you can. There are probably an infinite number of ways that you can invest in yourself, from taking a course to reading a book, going to the gym, or even starting your own YouTube channel. Which reminds me, please leave a like and subscribe to this channel if you have not already. It's completely free and would really help out my channel a lot. In this video, I'm going to go over what I did as a software engineer to invest in myself. For those of you that don't know, I recently got a job at Amazon as a software engineer, or SDE2 as they call it. Maybe I'll make a complete video about my interview experience. Leave it in the comments below if that is something you'd want to see, but in this video, I'll just give a quick recap. But basically, I got an initial screening interview from a recruiter. Then after I passed that, I had about 3 months to study up for the on-site interview, which is now completely online. I heard that before, the on-site interview was 5 hours long with lunch somewhere in the middle and no breaks in between. Thankfully, now the conditions are a little bit better. You only have 4 interviews with lunch in between and 15-minute breaks in between to go to the washroom or just mentally recharge. It is a very draining experience, and by that last interview, you will be absolutely exhausted. If you have an Amazon interview coming up, I'll detail exactly what I did to prepare for such an interview. Basically, you will have to know the leadership principles, or LPs as Amazon likes to call them, inside and out. These are things such as customer obsession and thinking big. Amazon wants you to use the STAR format, which stands for situation, task, action, result, putting as much details, as many numbers as possible, as many metrics as you can about scenarios that you have already accomplished and done. I'll leave a link in the description below with some sample questions, but I think Amazon also provides you with some samples as well. I would have my partner ask 3 to 4 of these questions per day, and I'd go over exactly what I would say and have an exact scenario in my mind for each question they could ask. This gets tricky if you do not have much work experience, but try to draw from past work experiences if you have nothing else. So that is one part of the interview process that typically gets overlooked, and the other process is technical and involves coding. I used the site leetcode.com and did over 200 problems, 130 medium ones, 71 easy questions, and 9 hard problems. This was probably more time than I needed. I have no idea how much time exactly I spent on this, but easily 3 to 4 hours per day over the 3 months that I had. I'll also mention that the language I used for all the questions was Python, because that's the language I knew and was comfortable in. If you're just starting off, or you don't have a language of preference, and Amazon is the company that you really want to apply for, I would recommend going with Java, as that's a language that almost all the engineers there know and use. Python, a lot of my interviewers were not familiar with. I don't know if that was a huge disadvantage to me, or maybe it was an advantage because they couldn't really check my syntax. But basically, Java would be a way to go for Amazon. But by doing so many of the problems, and even redoing a lot of the problems, I began to memorize a lot of the complicated ones, such as quicksort, and had a thorough understanding of how to solve all or almost all of the medium level problems. The hard questions are quite tough, and while I can't guarantee that they will not appear on your interview, I would not focus on them as they are quite difficult, and even if you get it and you just work your way through, show a lot of understanding, and make a good attempt at the problem, I doubt that they'll expect you to have a fully complete and functional solution. Even some of the medium problems, as long as you show your thought, how you're approaching the problem, you can still get through the interview without getting a fully complete solution. I would say the free version of LeetCode is probably good enough if you can get a good grasp of all the coding fundamentals such as trees, linked lists, depth first search, all those topics. If you can get a good understanding of all of them, then I think you'll be well prepared for the coding interview. I personally did pay for the premium version just to see which kinds of questions that Amazon focused on, but I would not say that it is required. The third part of the interview is where you have to design a system. There are plenty of other YouTube videos out there on how to do this, so I won't go too much into detail, but as long as you can code up or design a solution at a very high level, you'll be okay. Some examples that I practiced on were things like designing a parking garage, a bookstore, Amazon.com, Netflix, and Spotify. As you do more and more of these design problems, you'll find it's almost like an algorithm. You go through almost the same process every time. You always ask, clarify the requirements, make sure you know exactly what you are designing, and then you start with making something like a front end, a back end, databases, etc. You should also throw in that you know a lot of the AWS services, even if you don't fully understand them, just kind of mention them, have an idea of what they are at a high level. If you're storing things like pictures, say that you'd use something like Amazon S3, maybe like profile pictures, that would be a good thing to store on S3. Other things you have to do is do things like use load balancers, cache frequently accessed items, things like making your database redundant. All these things will show that you have a thorough understanding of how to design a robust system. Mocking up the API endpoints is also a good thing that you can show. Also, I had a whiteboard that I could show all my designs and code throughout the interview, although the code was a little hard to see on a whiteboard through a camera. Overall, looking at my interview process, it was extremely difficult, but also quite rewarding. Amazon SDEs in my role typically make around $200K per year and possibly more depending on location. That gives me a lot more money to invest in things such as VFV. That is how I invested in myself, and while this may not be applicable to everyone out there, you can still use the same principles to invest in yourself for 2022. That's it for this video, guys. Thanks a lot for watching. Don't forget to leave a like if this video helped you at all. Don't forget to subscribe if you have not already. It's completely free and will really help my channel out. Thanks again, and see you in the next video.